The way in which you speak to yourself and think to yourself can make or break the quality of your life. Sayings like "you get what you think about most of the time" don't only sound good, but actually work in practice. Those who speak to themselves in ways of lack, self-deprecation, victimhood, and so on tend to always find themselves living a life of quiet desperation, while those who learn how to discipline their self-talk and thoughts in a more constructive direction tend to find themselves living a life of fulfillment. Reality is very malleable. It is very subject to influence. Whose influence? Your influence. Now, there are certainly organizations, individuals, and so on that have agendas where they want you to think, speak, feel, and act in a certain way, and certainly in ways that only benefit them and most likely are going to harm you. But what they are really doing isn't trying to control necessarily the way you speak to yourself. They are trying to train you to speak to yourself in a certain way via brainwashing and suggestion. We only need to look at individuals like Edward Bernays, who was one of the pioneers of propaganda and manipulating public perception to get the masses to think a certain way about certain subjects, things, products, and so on. In fact, he had a huge influence in some of the advertising methods that are still used in kind of big ad corporations to this day. However, the only way that this can work is if they convince you to use your own power against yourself. But when you snap out of this and start to take back control of how you speak to yourself, everything in your life begins to change. Now, in this video, we're going to be going over exactly how to do this, how to take back control of your inner dialogue, your thoughts, and everything else that creates your reality that may have been hijacked. Ultimately, it's your ship and you get to choose the direction it moves in. And even if there's some very persuasive hijackers on the ship, we just need to throw them overboard so that we can get you to be more of the person that is the master of your own destiny. Now, to kick us off, I want to share with you an experiment, a very powerful experiment that was done by someone named Ellen Langer, who I believe was a professor or still is a professor at Harvard, a researcher, that was called the counterclockwise experiment. Now, this study was just eye-opening and touches upon a way in which you can intentionally do something to influence and brainwash yourself in a very particular direction that serves you. So I have a clip I'm going to play from a video a long time ago that you most likely have never seen that goes over what this experiment was, what happened, and how you can apply some of this into your own life to essentially start to create this environment where you talk to yourself in a way that actually benefits you. I want to start this video by telling you a quick story. Now, this is the story of the incredible counterclockwise experiment by Ellen Langer. Now, this story is going to show you the absolute true raw power of your mind, your thoughts, and your beliefs. So what happened in this experiment, in this story? Well, Ellen Langer, who is a Harvard professor, decided to conduct an experiment all the way back in 1979. So this experiment was developed to see what would happen to an older person's physiology if you really turned back the clock psychologically. Essentially, if you really created the conditions for this person to think, act, and feel like they were a certain amount of time ago, would the body follow suit and actually become younger? Now, this was a very interesting experiment to conduct because the common belief system is as we age, we become weak and frail and even sometimes seen as helpless. However, the results of this experiment and the implications of these results may blow your mind. And after, I'll go over how what was revealed in this experiment you can use to tap more into the raw, awesome potential of your own mind. Now, because Ellen couldn't actually take people and put them back into the past, and don't worry, I'm working on the time machine, it's just not ready yet. They decided to recreate the world of 1959, which at the time of the experiment was 20 years before. They then asked the participants of this experiment to live and act as if it really was 1959, not 1979. Now, the participants of this experiment were actually 8 elderly men who were all in their 70s. And when they stepped out of the van that was transporting them to the monastery that they would be staying in, they found themselves in a time warp as soon as they walked through the door. For example, a vintage radio was playing music that was popular in the 50s. Ed Sullivan, who was a famous TV presenter in the 50s, was interviewing guests on a black and white television set. Everything in this monastery, including the magazines and newspapers, had been placed there to recreate the world of 1959. So the environmental cues they were getting were telling them, actually, it's 1959, this is a fact. Now, they also had a control group of similar men who were in a similar environment, but they were told to act normally, so they didn't need to act as if it was 1959. Now, also realize that none of these elderly men who went into this monastery were treated as if they were old. So they weren't having help, for example, carrying their luggage up the stairs or helping them with anything else they would have been used to being helped with wherever they were, like the nursing homes they were in, and so on. Now, what's crazy is only a week into this experiment, both the experimental group and the control group started showing really crazy improvements in many different areas, including their physical strength, manual dexterity, gait, posture, perception, memory, cognition, taste sensitivity, hearing, and vision. Now, according to Langer, the more significant improvements were made in the group that were acting as if it was 1959, although there were still really good improvements in the control group. And what was even more amazing is that on the last day of this experiment, men who were considered frail, who were literally using canes to walk up to the monastery on day one, were playing an impromptu game of touch football on the lawn in front of the monastery. Langer later wrote in 1981 that many of the consequences of old age may be environmentally determined and thereby potentially reversed through manipulation of the environment. And her experiment certainly showed that this could be the case. So why am I sharing this experiment, this story with you? You may not be someone who would be considered an elder, so what significance does this have? Simple. The idea that environment beats will. In a very short amount of time, we're talking the matter of just weeks, these elderly men seem to get younger and improve their physical, mental, and emotional lives. And this is because they were put into an environment that made them feel and believe that they were actually younger. And they were also told to act as if it was 20 years ago. And through the combination of believing that and having an environment that supported that belief, men who were arriving to the experiment, to the monastery on day one, who were barely able to walk, were playing an impromptu game of touch football by the end. And so even if you're not old, you can apply this powerful principle in your life by setting up your environment to win, to support you in your growth and your mission, whatever it is. Your mind is so powerful that it will begin to shape your reality based on the thoughts and beliefs that you develop. And when you tap into the real raw power of your mind, your thoughts, your beliefs, you can start getting incredible results in the direction you want to get them, like Langer did for these elderly men. And there are so many environments that you can set up for yourself to cause you to actually progress and to win and bring that dream life you want to you, rather than stifle you in getting there. For example, some of these environments are your actual physical environment at home and otherwise, your inner world environment, knowing that the outer world follows the inner, and one of the biggest are the people that you hang out with, the peer group of other people you are around. Okay, so real quick, what can we learn from this experiment that Langer did? Well, again, one of the big takeaways is that environment is going to beat will. You see, if you are often in an environment that suggests all kinds of things to you, especially negative things, you are absolutely going to be influenced by all of that, no matter how much willpower you try and use to resist it. And this influence is going to start to develop different worldviews and beliefs that correspond to whatever these suggestions are. Which means your inner dialogue, the way you speak to yourself, the way you think about yourself and think to yourself, is going to be shaped based on these perspectives. However, if you create an environment that serves you in the direction you want to go, then suddenly you will be influenced very differently and in a way that's going to actually benefit you. You'll think and speak differently, your worldview will begin to change, and when your worldview and beliefs begin to change, your world world starts to change as well. Just like what happened to the older gentleman in Langer's experiment. They started to become and feel younger. Now, right off the bat, I'm going to give you a way in which you can do this for yourself, which is very simple but can have profound effects in your life very quickly. And this is just to do what we could consider an environment audit. Now, mainly we're going to look at what we consider your physical environment, so your physical space or the physical spaces you go into, and your digital environment. So what are you doing when you're on the internet? What are you doing online? What are you watching? What are you consuming, etc. And so you simply write down all of the environments that you constantly visit, whether it's physical or digital. So what is your physical space like? So let's say you have a bedroom, you're in your bedroom a lot. Then you ask yourself, is this room conducive or set up to allow me to move closer to my goals, to brainwash me or suggest certain things that actually benefit me, or is it harming me? Is it disorganized? Is it chaotic? You can also look at physical environments that you find yourself in most often. For example, do you like going to the pub or the bar like all of the time? Yet you feel like this feeling of foreboding, or there's a lot of people who are very negative when you go there. Is that something you might want to reduce in your life? And on the opposite end of the spectrum, there could be places you go which are very uplifting and actually put you in a much better energy. For example, it could be a pub, it could be anywhere, but let's say you go there and you're with people who are incredibly positive and it's a good time and it makes you feel better and everyone's kind of supporting each other and it has this community feel to it, all trying to support each other to their dreams. That's an environment you may want to spend more time at. For your digital environment, this is pretty simple. Are you looking at, say, the news? And we can include TV here, not only just your digital on the computer, but are you looking at things that drag you down or lift you up? Are you consuming content that helps you improve or kind of keeps you stuck in drama and negativity and whatever else? Essentially, when you've done this and you've listed everything out, you want to just label each as either harmful, beneficial, or neutral if you want to add that one in the middle too. And then once you've done this, my invitation to you would be at least to reduce the amount of time you spend in environments that distract you, are negative, or are in that harmful category, and to start increasing the amount of time and energy you spend in those environments that are helping you, that are supporting you, that are moving you into a better place energetically. If you fix up these environments, drop some of the ones that are influencing you negatively, you're going to start seeing pretty quick changes in your life. So now I want to go over how you can start forming some new beliefs, a new worldview, so that you can uproot the ones that are not serving you and replace them with ones that will operate in the background on autopilot that actually benefit you. You see, your beliefs are going to play the biggest role in how you talk to yourself because they are basically a record player that is playing in the background all day long. You know, they say that we have anywhere between like 80,000 to 90,000 thoughts each day, and that from day to day we have about 90 to 95% the same thoughts that we did the day before. Now, this is great if your thoughts from the day before and kind of that record player that keeps playing is playing very positive thoughts. If it's telling you that you can do anything and everything you want to do, if it's telling you that you are loved, if it's telling you that you can do this, you can do that, then great. But for most people, that's not the case. Most of their worldview is there's so much lack, there's so much suffering, there's so much struggle, and they're having tens of thousands of these same thoughts on a daily basis. This is coming from those beliefs and those worldviews that are kind of locked by lock and key in your subconscious unless you go in, change them, uproot them, and put in something new, which is what we're going to go over how to do. So now I'm going to play you a clip from another video that I've made that explains this very, very well. Essentially, how beliefs are formed, but how you can start uprooting some of those beliefs you no longer want to have in there, and how you can start replacing them with the ones you actually do want to have in your subconscious that will play out in your life. A belief is simply a thought you keep thinking. And to make this very simple, a belief is a thought you have thought over and over again and have emotionalized to such a point that it becomes rooted in your subconscious as a belief. The feeling you have behind your beliefs or behind your thoughts are what really makes all the difference. You can think of it like having a certain charge or more energy behind certain thoughts than others. This is why certain things will trigger you and trigger an emotion, which we can consider just energy in motion, more than other things. Some thoughts come into your head throughout the day and have no impact, while other thoughts will come in and you will get very emotional about, or certain things in your external environment will cause you to think a certain way that gets you very emotional. This is because the feeling behind thoughts is what really propels it into becoming a belief. So this is why when you start thinking in a pattern type of way, a way that you may think most days, if you kind of wake yourself up and take notice, you'll notice that it always comes coupled with an emotion. You're rarely there in a neutral state just thinking about things unconsciously without an emotion attached. When Edward Bernays worked with the tobacco industry, he always looked to pair certain ideas with a strong feeling like freedom. This is what was used for tobacco in particular because people time and time again were exposed to this idea that cigarettes would make them feel freedom. They visualized this when they thought of cigarettes or they would see the advertising campaigns, and this created a belief that this was the case. And so a certain thought was implanted in their mind, a feeling was associated to it, and so it gave them this belief that when I smoke a cigarette or I do X, Y, and Z, I'm going to feel a sense of freedom. I am this, I am that. Now, what's very interesting about our beliefs is they really do paint our world and create our reality, and this is why. Because you have what's called a reticular activation system. Now, a reticular activation system is essentially something that tries to reduce the workload of your conscious mind. Because in your subconscious mind, you have all of the patterns, all of the beliefs, but if you were to try and consciously juggle all of that at the same time, you would go crazy. You wouldn't be able to do it. And so your reticular activation system is always on the prowl, always looking out to see what is deemed as important for you to put your attention on. And guess what? It is your beliefs that play a big part on what your reticular activation system believes is important or not. So for example, if you have a belief about money that, money doesn't grow on trees and you never have enough of it, your reticular activation system will bring things into your attention throughout your day that reinforce that belief because it has been trained to see things that correspond with that. Because it's in the subconscious, it's deemed as important, so it will continue to look out for more and more evidence that that is the case. Think of your reticular activation system as like a bouncer at a club. And in the club is the things that get into your conscious attention. And so all of these things, like everything is coming towards the door for the bouncer, and the bouncer, the RAS, the reticular activation system, can only let in things that are deemed important or who are on the list of guests for the conscious mind. And so let's say you have a more negative outlook on life and a positive outlook starts to approach the club. The reticular activation system is going to look at the clipboard and go, nope, you're not on the list. I'm not putting you through to the conscious mind. But then some negative beliefs start coming through. The reticular activation system looks at the list and goes, oh wait, you are on the list, you're deemed as important, go right on through. And so again, a bill comes through and the belief, it triggers an emotion and the belief comes through of I never have enough, I'm always don't have enough money or whatever else it is. Maybe something happens in a relationship and you have a belief that your relationships never work out, or women are a certain way, men are a certain way. Bouncer goes, yep, that's in the subconscious, that's deemed as important, you're on the list. You get to go through. And so this is what the reticular activation system is doing. If you've ever noticed when you, to give you a good example of also how this can work and how we can change this, if you've ever been excited about something, let's say it's been a new car. Let's say you wanted to get a new car and you were very excited about the prospect of getting that car and you believed you could get it, like you weren't throwing in any doubt, but you were very excited about it. You may start realizing that you're seeing that car everywhere now and even in the color that you wanted to get it. Why is that? Because you kept thinking about that car, you attached it to a feeling which was excitement, and so it became this belief, and then the RAS saw, okay, this is something that's important, this is in the subconscious now, we want to continue showing them and making them aware when this car is about, so you start seeing it more. In the past, that car was probably going past you almost as frequently, but you just didn't notice it. And so continually thinking about something while attaching that positive emotion to it, which in this case was excitement, helped create a certain belief that got the attention of the RAS to continue bringing that through, which allows for a conviction or, a much more powerful, even more deep-rooted belief to come through, like a worldview, we'll say. Essentially, your reticular activation system is continually looking for evidence to confirm your current worldview. Now, realize I didn't say continually looking for evidence about what is actually true. It is continually looking for evidence about what is true towards your current worldview. Not truth with a capital T, but what is true based on your current worldview determined by your beliefs and your subconscious. That means if your worldview is one that that sees and paints everything negatively, it will find the evidence to essentially confirm that truth. But on the opposite end of the spectrum, if you're someone who has many positive beliefs and thinks about things in a very positive way, it's going to do the same for that as well. It's going to continually bring you the evidence of why you should be grateful, or why you're abundant, or why you're healthy in that same way. And so it can either be our best friend in that way, or our worst enemy if it's more on the negative side. But we can also, again, deliberately start uprooting some of these beliefs that are causing this negative sway and start planting the beliefs that are going to get you to be more positive, which will end up bringing more of what you want into your life. Now, this obviously will act as a self-perpetuating feedback loop if we don't do something about it. You'll have a belief that life is a struggle, for example, because you were exposed to this idea repeatedly, paired with a strong emotion. It was turned into a belief that your RAS then let in more of because it was deemed important, which provides more evidence of it being true. And now you have even more conviction that this is the case because your RAS, reticular activating system, is literally not allowing the evidence to the contrary into your attention. Remember, it's not letting it into the club, it's not letting it into the facility where your conscious mind is. So now we are going to go over how to break this cycle and create new patterns to actually serve you in the next part. But it is crucial you understand how beliefs are formed and what's really going on in the background, really reverse engineering this so that we then know how to build the beliefs we actually want. Keep in mind that we never rise above the opinion of ourselves, which is why it is so crucial to restructure our beliefs and give ourselves beliefs and create beliefs for ourselves that are empowering instead of disempowering. Again, the RAS is not here to screw us over. It's actually an amazing tool. It is just working with what we give it. So how do we go about changing our beliefs? Well, there are a few things that we can do, and I want you to keep in mind. The first thing is to give more importance or more attention to the vision than the physical circumstances, because your current physical circumstances are probably going to continually give you evidence to reinforce the negative beliefs that you currently have. The RAS, the reticular activating system, will then provide more evidence that it is the case, and again, we get into that perpetuating loop. And so you want to give more loyalty to the vision than the physical circumstances. And I believe that quote comes from Neville Goddard, which is why he always talks about assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled. Because if you're thinking about certain things that help you assume the feeling of what it is you actually want in your life versus what is already in the physical circumstances, well then the RAS again you're going to create a belief around that. The RAS will play off of that belief and then start providing you evidence that that belief is true. And as you're doing this, giving more loyalty to the vision than the physical circumstances, it will cause you to think more about the vision in which you are excited about. This will create an elevated feeling about it, and this will start creating the belief about it, which will again start to change your reticular activation system. Now, what is crucial as you are making this shift is to collect evidence that this is occurring. Again, your RAS is going to start giving you evidence that this new belief is true. Right? And one of the most important things to do is to start becoming aware and vigilant of that evidence and to start jotting it down. And we'll go over this a little bit more as we go over tools. But it is crucial that, again, we start taking it from just a thought that's coming in and we almost physicalize it by writing it down. Now, when it comes down to this, one thing I want you to recognize is that we get what we think about most of the time, and we also get what we feel about most of the time. Now, if we have certain beliefs that are more negatively primed, then if you just go unconscious all of the time, you're going to be essentially thinking about the things you don't want or negative things most of the time. But notice that I mentioned if you go unconscious all of the time, because that's when your subconscious is basically running you on autopilot. And so what we can do is just become more conscious and start cutting ourselves off, really interrupting the pattern when certain negative things are occurring. And one thing you want to keep in mind is, what are you voting for? Essentially, the more thoughts you have and you entertain, as in you let it go through its whole process, that are negative, that is a vote towards that belief, which will reinforce the belief. But the more times you think positively or cut off that pattern, interrupt that one, and create a new one that's more positively swayed, the more you're voting for that side of things. And ultimately, at the end of the day, which have you given more votes to, which is essentially what have you given more energy to? Essentially, If you vote more for the beliefs you wish to form on any given day, you are starting to create more of that. You are activating your reticular activating system to give you more evidence of that, which is giving you more convictions around whatever that belief is. However, if you allow the negative to just kind of go through its pattern as usual, you are voting for that. And a lot of people are giving 99% of their votes each and every single day to the negative and then wondering why their life is incredibly negative in everything that's going on. Right? But if you start speaking to yourself more from the positive, you start reaffirming that, you start feeling excited towards those things, you start really creating those beliefs and cutting off the other beliefs so they can't fire and wire more and create more neural connections, you'll notice that things begin to change. And so which are you voting for more often than not? Now, an important way to do this is to affirm what it is you actually want to believe and who it is you want to become. You need to know what you're looking to move into here. Another reason a lot of people default into the negative beliefs and start creating these identities around themselves that are more negative, like I am not good with money, or I am, whatever else it is else it is for you. I'm not good in relationships. I'm just someone, I'm not special, I guess. I'm not lucky. I'm not, these people have it, I don't have, whatever that it is. The reason that is because a lot of people have no aim. And so they're basically being taken for a ride, just being given beliefs through programming and through things we mentioned earlier, and ultimately those things are almost always on the negative side of things. If you allow people to choose for you, most people are swayed negatively on the planet at this moment, therefore you're going to do that too if you don't choose for yourself. And so you need to determine, what is it I even want to believe? What beliefs do I want to install into my subconscious? Who is it I need to become? You really need to map that out so that we can then start removing the beliefs that no longer align to that, and also installing the beliefs that are going to allow you to be this, whatever it is that you've chosen most of the time. And again, once you have created that vision for yourself, you are going to ignore the sense data that doesn't support that vision. You are going to give more loyalty to the vision than the physical circumstances. And we're going to go over again how to do this, but ultimately ignore everything else. Remember, where focus goes, energy flows. Things you give your attention to grow in your life. And so the more you entertain thoughts that don't serve you, the more you're going to get of those. The more you look at things in your physical to reinforce negative beliefs, the stronger those beliefs will become, and then through your reticular activating system, the more of that stuff's going to come into your physical. And so do your best to completely ignore anything that does not serve you in your mission to become who you want to become, or to believe what it is you want to believe. Again, if you trip up here and there, that's absolutely fine. Just try and recover, but that's ultimately the goal here. You want to get so intentional with only accepting in whatever it is that reinforces who you want to become or what you want to believe. Remember, you are in infinite action. You are always sending out a signal. You are always recreating yourself in every moment. So how are you speaking to yourself? What are the thoughts you are having? These are going to go a long way to determining who you are going to be. Now, I talk about how you need to focus on a vision or have more faith in the vision than your current physical circumstances. So how do you do that? How do you create a vision or know you have the right vision for you to then focus on that instead of whatever is happening in your current circumstances? Well, in this video, I go over exactly how you can do that, how you can form an aligned dream, what we call a DCA, objectives and action steps that help you stay aligned and in line with whatever that is and move you in that direction, gives you something to focus on, and helps you really build this massive thing in your life that's going to benefit you. So I'd go watch that next.